Hello everybody and welcome to another top 5 board gaming video. Today's topic is all about hex-based board games, that is to say a regular hexagon with equal sides all around and 120-degree angles on the inside. Now essentially what this means is that you can move beyond the idea of moving up, down, left, and right, and you have orthogonal movement in the diagonal directions. Now a lot of times you see this in war games and a whole bunch of other stuff, and of course it is a huge topic overall. There are a ton of games that utilize hexes in some way, shape, or form, and I just wanted to talk about my personal favorites. Now most often these are going to be combative games and all that kind of stuff, but of course I want to hear what you guys have to say. What are your personal favorites? Do you have any that kind of break with convention of not being a warlike or combative game? Let me know anything and everything in the comments below. I'm really curious about this one because I know that this is something that kind of has a narrow lane, but at the same time there's a ton of stuff within that lane, and so let me know anything and everything. But that said, we're just going to jump right in with my personal number 5. Ops. This is a game that I really enjoy because it's got a great sci-fi theme. It really feels like Alien and that series of movies, and the idea is that you have basically the good guys and then the monstrosities essentially, or I guess like the colonists, the soldiers, and the bad guys essentially, and the idea is that you're moving around the map trying to destroy one another, and it's pretty fun. It's a pretty standard put everybody down on the board, and you have your skirmishes as you go all around. It's very simple, pretty fun, and I personally enjoy it, but at the same time, it's relatively simplistic, which is why it's so low on the list. That said, it is still a solid game, and I do recommend it as something that gets into a good theme and has some decent asymmetry with it with the different factions. Overall, Nexus Ops, my number 5. At number 4, I've got Twilight Imperium 4. And in this case, a hex-based game where the galaxy is made up of hexagonal structures, and it's essentially a 4X game where you have your extermination, exploration, expansion, and I can never remember the fourth one. But that said, I love this game. I absolutely adore it. It takes way too long to play though. It's very difficult to find a group for it, and it is supremely complex. The fact that everything is made up of hexes is almost a second thought to everything else that's going on in this game, between the fact that you've got all these different factions that you can play as, all of the different ways that you can win, the different political aspects that you have, all of this kind of stuff. It is a wonderful game truly, but the reason it's so low on the list is because it is such a relatively minor portion of how the game actually functions and what you're doing and everything else going on around it, that it's more just the generalized structure and enabling you to move around in a good way. But still, wonderful game. Highly recommend it if you have, 6 to 8 hours to spare. Twilight Imperium 4 is my number 4. At number 3, I've got Dominant Species. As a biologist myself, I love games like this. Anything that's related to biology and that sort of thing is always something that I tend to enjoy, and Dominant Species, especially because it's from GMT Games, means that it's got some very deep strategy into it. In this case, you get to pick a different type of animal or insect that you're playing as, which gives you specific advantages, and the idea is that you're moving around into different climate zones so that you can survive better, find better food, and all of that kind of stuff, and hopefully come out on top as the dominant species. In this particular case, the hexes will take place as having different sort of biomes that you're able to place down on the grid, and you're moving around on them. And again, it's meant to be as a movement mechanic so that you can move around and do all this kind of stuff, and I find it personally to be a little bit more focused compared to something like Twilight Imperium because there is less going on, but at the same time you still have a very high strategic value. Dominant Species, my number 3. At number 2, I've got Ukraine 43. This is on my list for 3 main reasons. First off, it's a great game. Second off, it's a war game. And third off, because it's a war game, I hope I don't get hamstrung and, ridiculed too much for not having a bunch of war games on the list. Because I'm not a war gamer, it's not really my thing, and I know a ton of war games utilize hex-based movement. So essentially, Ukraine 43 is based off of an actual campaign that took place between the Germans and the Soviets in World War II, where eventually the capital of Ukraine, Kiev, fell. The thing is that there were massive casualties on both sides, but it was a constant back and forth between the Soviets and the Germans, and it was absolutely bloody, absolutely brutal, and it was a horrible campaign. Now, that said, this is a GMT game, and it's based off of what they refer to as the zone of control bond rules that they use for a lot of their different games. They've got the Command and Color series, all of that kind of stuff. GMT makes a lot of this style of war game. This particular one is just the one that I own. It's very near and dear to me because it's Ukraine and I'm partially Ukrainian, and so I really enjoy it. It's something that I haven't played too often, but as far as a hex game and as far as a quote-unquote real war game, it works for me. I wish that I could play it more. I wish that I could really dive into the complexities of it, but all in all, it's a great game. Ukraine 43, my number 2. At number 1, I've got Mage Knight, because of course I have Mage Knight, because Mage Knight is an amazing game and it should be number 1 on every single list no matter what. Except for games where it doesn't actually fit. But that said, this is a game where you have tiles that you'll be flipping over and exploring, and you're finding bad guys and doing this, that, and the other thing. I love the versatility of the game. I love the asymmetry of the game with the different characters. I love how well the game melds different mechanics together, from deck building to exploration, to combat, to difficulty curves, to pretty much everything else. The one thing that I do regret at the moment is the fact that I still do not own Lost Legion, the expansion, but as a solo game it really works, as a cooperative game it really works, as a competitive game it really works. What more can you ask for? It works exceedingly well on all fronts, and on top of that, it adjusts how the hexagonal field is built up depending on how you're playing. All in all, Mage Knight is a wonderful game. Highly recommend it, and my number 1. Well, everybody, that's going to be it for me. I hope that you enjoyed this video on my top 5 favorite hexagonal-based games. Now, again, hexagonal tiles are used all over the place, and primarily we see them in war games, but we do see them in a lot of other different types of games, but primarily something that involves some kind of skirmishing and that sort of thing. And so I'm curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think. What are your favorite personal hexagonal games? Are they combative? Are they non-combative? Are they a little bit less combative? Are they cooperative? Let me know anything and everything in the comments below, because you know I love to hear it all. And of course, as always, if you haven't done so already, please take a look at my various social media pages where you can interact with myself and my channel in a whole bunch of really fun ways. For those of you who are still worried about the COVID thing, we're fighting it, we're going, we're getting there, we're moving, and hopefully by the end of the summer, we will at least have it reasonably under control, that we'll be able to go back to some semblance of normalcy, going back to the office, going back to schools, all of that kind of stuff. But we just have to cross our fingers and see. In the meantime, everybody stay safe, be well. Hope that you enjoyed the video, and I will see you next time.